Are writing critique groups helpful? That's what I'm going to talk about when I answer today's question from the AMA feed. Hi, this is Carma Spence, the Own Your Awesome Mentor. And today's question comes from Olhavera. And Olhavera asks, are you part of a critique group or do you depend solely on your editor/publisher for feedback? I have not had a lot of good experience with critique groups. I started working with critique groups probably, I'm going to say early 80s, and I used to do it over a listserv. So it was all done online, and I had experiences where either A, everything was like roses and puppy dogs and I could walk on water, which is not helpful. It doesn't help me change or grow or improve my story. Or you'd always have that one jerk in the group who would rip everything to shreds because that's just what that person liked to do. And I remember one particular story got ripped to shreds, being told that the emotions the characters were experiencing were all very superficial, which hurt me deeply because I was expressing my own emotions at the time. I was not able to pull myself apart from that. So critique groups can be very good, but you have to be very careful about the ones you go to. You need to make sure that the people there are all on the same page, that we are going to provide constructive critiques. That means they're not going to rip you to shreds just because they can. They're not going to be mean and self-serving. They're going to say, this story would work better for me if you change this. I think you should go in this direction. And basically, you take all of your feedback and you run it through your own filter, because sometimes the feedback may say, well, I think you should do this. And it's not that you need to do this, it's just that you didn't communicate what you wanted to communicate, so the person didn't understand. So that means you need to go back and rework it. I belong to a Toastmasters group now that is for writers, and we read our works as if they were speeches. We turn them into speeches, and sometimes we turn our speeches into written work. It goes both ways. And then we do these round robin critiques, and those I've found were much more helpful. But I think in part that's because the people in the group are older and more experienced. So can you find a group of your peers that are helpful? It all depends on their maturity level. If you've got a lot of people who are immature, and that doesn't necessarily mean younger, there are immature people who are older. If you've got people who are in there who are immature and not willing to give constructive criticism, then the group is going to be harmful. The other part of that question was, do I depend on my editor or publisher for feedback? Yes and no, because I think everybody needs to have at least one editor go through their work. And my work tends to be pretty clean when it gets to the editor because I really go through it. But I still miss stuff. And that's when you really need a good editor. And I mentioned this in yesterday's video. You need a good editor. And there are several different types of editors, which I think I will talk about in another video. In basic, there's proofreaders, there's substantive editors, and then there are like all-in-one kind of editors. And I believe that it's always a good idea to have a proofreader. Always a good idea to have a proofreader. And it's good to have that proofreader be someone who has not read your work before, because I used to work on magazines and newsletters for companies that I worked for. And we would have all read this stuff so many times that by the time we got to the final, typos made it every time because we knew what was supposed to be there. And that's what you see. That's why you need a second pair of eyes that has not seen that work before, because they're going to see what's actually there, not what they know should be there. And depending on where you are in your work, a substantive editor can be really good. A substantive editor is someone who takes your work and says, you know what, the organization will work better this way, or you need to beef this part up and dial this one back. They basically make your overall vision come through more strongly. Yes, critique groups can be helpful, but you have to be very careful about the membership and the rules of the critique group. Yes, you need an editor. Absolutely. And if you're working with a traditional publisher, they will assign you an editor. And hopefully you'll have a good relationship with that person. If you are publishing on your own, you can hire editors. There are tons of freelance editors available that you can hire. I'm going to be hiring one probably in the next 2 months for my next book. So what do I do personally? I really don't depend on critique groups. I had really bad experiences. And with the longer works, it's harder to get a really good feedback because they can only see one section at a time. Do I depend on an editor? Yes. The few times I've not depended on an editor, disaster. always, always have an editor. And your publisher, it depends on the publisher. Sometimes they'll assign you an editor. Sometimes they won't get your project, and that's when you don't go with that publisher. It all depends. I hope you found today's video information helpful. This is Carma Spence, the Own Your Awesome Mentor. And I want you to remember this. Think outside that box, because that box prevents you from living up to your potential. It keeps you safe in the status quo. Spread your wings and fly, because you, yes, you, are capable of more than you know. If you like this video, please go to YouTube and like it there. Leave a comment on my blog. I love to hear from the people who watch this video. And if you've got a question for an upcoming video, it can be anything on book writing, creating products, mindset, anything that really helps you on your legacy creator's journey or with public speaking. Ask me your questions. I will answer them in a future video. I really want the Weekday Wisdom to be something that you value and look forward to watching.